Hello and welcome to Comic Island. My name is Arden and today a bunch of people did some stupid stuff on the internet and now we get to talk about it. The topic of the day is milkshakes, so I hope you're not hungry because milkshakes factor heavily into this story of harassment, and we're going to spend a little bit of time on this. If you don't like that, fine, but I don't know why you clicked on this video. But I happen to follow a bunch of people involved in all of this, so I got a front row seat to the whole damn incident, and have some stuff to say about all of it. And I can do what I want, so there. I'll be honest, I really wasn't sure if I really wanted to touch on the issue, because I don't have much to add that other people haven't said already. Uncertain about it all, I put the topic, along with a few others, on our Patreon page for this week's poll. The topic won that poll anyways, so here we are. And if that's what the people want, fine, no skin off of my back. I had feelings on all this already, and frankly, sitting back and seeing nothing didn't feel like the right thing to do in this situation. Sometimes we need volume, and for a lot of people to take a strong stance on things. So what happened? What's all this about milkshakes, you might be asking? Well, it all began when Marvel Comics editor Heather Antos dared to post a picture of herself and some fellow coworkers out, presumably on a break or just going about their daily lives, getting some milkshakes. I know, the audacity! Seriously, I have tons of people I follow on Instagram and Twitter and all the other social media things who do this all the time. But because this is the magical world of comic books, it led to a barrage of absurd tweets, mostly insults, but also these petty, weird little passive-aggressive comics like, "Gee, I can't imagine why Marvel's sales are in the toilet," "Fake geek girls," and "the creepiest collection of stereotypical SJWs anyone could possibly imagine." The comments go on and on like this, as the original tweet now has over 300 replies to a selfie about a milkshake. Obviously, these comments aren't all negative now that the story is kind of spread out, not by any stretch of the imagination. But the whole thing is completely absurd. I actually got those quotes from a news article because digging through that thread of bile is deeply frustrating. So in response to this, a number of news sites covered the incident. A lot of people were correctly horrified that something so minor got such an overblown, insane reaction from some elements of the fanbase. And I agree with the backlash against what constitutes harassment in a major, clear-cut manner. In spite of that, people have been all over those news articles claiming that the harassers were just voicing their criticisms of Marvel and that Heather should be prepared for this sort of thing if she is going to represent herself as an employee of the company online. Now, there is a grain of an argument within that. If you're going to work for a company like Marvel, or in any form of work online with social media, you're gonna have to be prepared to deal with a certain level of scrutiny, especially when it comes to stuff people are really passionate about. This has been true for a very long time, and I'm reminded that comic book fans have always been a little fanatic, to say the least. This whole incident kind of made me think of that decade-long campaign to bring Hal Jordan back when he was gone. And that incident was complete with protests, constant pressure on the DC employees, and more than a few death threats, all long before the widespread proliferation of modern social media. Harassment has just sort of become part of the job for the men and women who work in the comic book industry, or like I said, pretty much anything heavily based in social media. When we look at comics, just ask Dan Slott or Nick Spencer, who have gotten so many death threats between them at this point, you'd think they were some extremist politician instead of the poorly paid, fairly obscure writers that they are. The reality is that if you want to work in this industry, or really any industry that requires a public face and an online presence, you better learn to armor yourself quickly against harsh words. As a YouTube person, I can vouch for that from personal experience, but so can anyone. And while people can say that's not right, it is the reality of the situation, and it's part of what makes the internet the internet. People are allowed to speak their mind here, and some of the people are inevitably going to be pretty lousy about it. They have lousy minds. That was true in the world long, long before the internet, and nothing has changed or is about to change in that regard anytime soon. Look, I'm just telling you as a warning. If you want to be an online presence or even just involved in the internet, you have to armor yourself. You have to build a resistance against abusive comments. As much as people might say this is some terrible evil in the world, and I'm not defending it, I think on some level it is important we learn to build that armor. We have to learn to handle insults and words people might use as weapons. Have we learned nothing from Tyrion Lannister? So I get it, it's not new, and it's always going to be part of the world of the internet, especially with all these unstable people out there with no sense of boundaries. But that doesn't make this most recent incident of harassment any more acceptable or by any sense of the word okay. This industry is tough enough already for women that they really don't need every single thing they do online to be accompanied by clingy, whining losers who have nothing better to do but vent their frustrations at a goddamn selfie. That will somehow translate into the minds of the crazies as a controversial argument. Though I will point out men face plenty of harassment online too, especially in the comic book industry. Look, I mentioned Dan Slott and Nick Spencer for a reason. But let's be real. A lot of women are treated far more terribly than men online. You can find this out for yourself if you don't believe me. Ask literally any one of them working in the comic book industry. And just ask, see what they say. Even the tweets I did see as to what could be argued as a legitimate criticism being directed at Marvel via Heather, it still feels entirely inappropriate in the context of the situation. Like if you ran into a writer at, say, Starbucks buying a milkshake, would you feel that was an ideal time to yell about how their comics are too progressive for your taste? I get that the internet's a little different for that, but criticism really doesn't belong in the reply sections of a picture. Anyone who says otherwise is making an insane argument on its face. This is an important point, too, that I really want to hammer home. Criticism is not harassment. There is absolutely no need to direct your criticism at the person you are criticizing, especially when they really don't have any power or sway over the stuff you're complaining about and are clearly just having a little bit of fun, taking a moment out of their lives to enjoy themselves. I think that's what bothers me the most. It's so insane, and the idea that people are still arguing against this boggles my mind. Do you have a problem with Marvel? Cool. So do I. More than one, in fact. Anyone who follows this channel should be patently aware about how I feel about Marvel right now. But I speak my mind here, on a public forum, for all of us to share. Anyone at Marvel can check out my thoughts on this, but I don't incessantly tweet my problems about the company to Axel Alonso or anyone else on the Twitter sphere, because I don't know. Such a thing has never really occurred to me. As somebody who criticizes just about anything to do with comics when given the opportunity, I am patently aware and can tell you with an absolute certainty that if any writer, editor, or artist wants to hear what people think about their book, they will find those opinions. It's really easy. Anyone can find criticism if they go looking for it. So there's no need, reason, or excuse to air your dirty laundry at random Marvel employees while they go about their day-to-day lives. It lacks dignity and is incredibly rude. Another thing that bothers me about this is that it makes the fan community look nutty. I mean, let's face it, we're still just barely scraping by in terms of public acceptance as a form of media. If all anyone sees from the comic book community is bile like this, then pretty soon, writers, artists, and other employees at big companies like Marvel are gonna start closing their social media accounts. Then nobody wins. The connection the internet offers us with these creators will dry up. Nobody gets to share their love of the work, and nobody gets to share ideas or fan art or anything else fun. The bad eggs risk spoiling everything potentially great about a two-way line of communication between creator and consumer, all in the name of some potential imagined slight. I had been following Heather for some time before all this started because I follow a lot of people in the comic book industry on Twitter. In that regard, there was nothing special about her in particular. I just found her tweets useful and interesting, like I do a lot of other people like this on Twitter. We don't want to lose that as a community. It's a great thing to have available to us. And more still, We really don't want people of any gender or race to feel unwelcome when it comes to the prospect of working in the comic book industry. If you believe in fair play, then you believe in that. So this harassment is a problem, but I am well aware most of you listening to this, if not all of you, very much aren't part of that problem. I would be preaching to the choir here if the message of this video were simply don't harass people. The vast majority of you that watch our content are the best kind of viewers. We all share a love of comics and don't harass or bully people over it. In fact, most of you, from what I've seen in the comments, would never even dream of such a thing. Even though we do get the occasional jerk who crops up, the amount of normal people in our viewer base easily outnumber the bad eggs by a ratio of at least 10 to 1. I can say that without hesitation because I see it in every video and feedback we get from you guys every day. I believe this is true to a degree of the larger comic book community as well. We hear from the nutcases, but most people that like comics just read them and don't really spend a lot of time on Twitter carefully watching every single little thing a Marvel editor might be doing on any given day. And like I said, there's more to this video and more to the whole story. As word spread in the days that followed the initial tweet, a funny thing happened. That silent majority spoke up. Sure enough, messages of support began to pour in from all corners of the comic book industry. The grim tweets from Heather about all of the harassment that made me feel profoundly sad gave way to more hopeful tweets of gratitude to the tremendous amount of support Heather got as people learned what happened. Comic book creators and other influential figures began to broadcast their support for Heather and all women working in the comic book industry. In the sign of solidarity, the somewhat amusing hashtag MakeMineMilkshake began trending, with all sorts of people posting pictures of themselves with milkshakes as a little show of their support. Even Archie Comics got in the action, bless their little hearts. It was all kind of silly, but you know what? It also kind of worked. The hatred was drowned out as pretty much every single comic book company had somebody within their group express their support and speak out against the harassment. Love drowned out hate in a big way. Well, love and milkshakes. Lots of milkshakes. Hey true believers, it's your old pal Arden here with this patented way that you can show your support for basic human decency with my own milkshake recipe. Alright, so we're gonna try and make a milkshake live on camera and see how that goes. So, the key to making a milkshake is 3 scoops of ice cream. I went with the always creative vanilla. Always a good choice. Get in there. I have no plan for how this is gonna go. There we go. What about an ice cream scoop, you might be asking? Nah, don't worry about it. Just 3 big spoonfuls of vanilla or any ice cream. That's the fun about milkshakes. You can do anything. And it's good times. This is too much. Oh well. And then you add a little bit of milk. That's actually a 1/4 cup, but yeah, you can just kind of eyeball it. And then just a good old drop of vanilla. Oh, right. Hey guys, I don't think I'm gonna edit this. This is just some dumb, unplanned thing, and I want to see what it looks like completely unedited. There we go. Little tiny bit of syrup. This is actually the one part you can really mess up if you do too much. You see. There we go. Alright, and then a pinch of salt. I don't know why, it works. There we go. Okay. Now for the moment of truth, true believers. So that's how I make a milkshake. Now the last important step is you gotta remember not to drink it too fast or else you're gonna give yourself brain freeze. Let's see here. This is too solid. Great. Well, that didn't work whatsoever.
And that's how you make the perfect milkshake. That's a huge difference in recording quality.
That's the real message of this video, if there is one. Not milkshakes. That we can drown out hatred and the harassment in love and milkshakes. Regardless of how you might feel about Marvel or whatever your political orientation may be, there's no excuse for harassment ever, no matter what side it's coming from. There's nothing anyone can do at Marvel or DC that would justify this sort of behavior, or worse still, death threats. Nothing. Anyone that emotionally invested in these characters, I pity them. Pity is all they deserve. Comics are a place of fun and the exploration of ideas. People who resort to harassment over comics strike me as never having any sort of true fun. Nobody is making them read these comics, and we can all vote with our wallets. If you really have something to say, by all means, start a blog, make a Facebook post, put a video up on YouTube. Just, for the love of God, leave the random employees at Marvel alone. Look, I make fun of their work and criticize them all the time, but I can tell you from personal experience in dealing with these people that they are doing their best and love these characters just as much as we do. There's a difference between criticism and harassment. There's a difference between criticizing something and hating something, although fans are so bad at making that distinction. So the harassers out there need to learn to back off with the constant whining at some writer or editor who does something they don't like. It's petty and so small. We must call them out, drown out their message of hatred with that of respect, and if necessary, block, report, or mute. This matter isn't up for debate, more of a call to arms as I see it. Imaginary, feckless internet arms, but arms just the same. If you see this behavior, call it out. Tell creators that the bullies don't speak for all of us, and if need be, report the malicious fans. Social media is starting to gradually take this stuff more seriously, as is the federal police of many countries when it comes to more serious death threats. We can fight against this, and if milkshakes have taught me anything, it's that we can succeed. Nobody who bullies is brave or strong. These aren't exactly people who are impossible to outwit or outplay. They're hecklers, stooges, everything that isn't milkshake. All I ask is that the next time you're on Facebook or Twitter, maybe consider going to one of your favorite creators' pages and leaving them a nice little message. Follow them if you don't already, so you can help to watch out for this sort of harassment, and confront such things in whatever safe way you can when you encounter it. Imagine if you got this sort of negativity constantly and throughout your life. Sometimes a kind word can make a difference in the lives of people going through that, even to somebody who's relatively successful or has been doing that for a while. We all learn to build up this armor over time when you work in the public sphere, but every once in a while, that armor can use some reinforcement. So that's the end of the video. Feel free to leave what I assume will only be perfectly calm and rational comments below. Finally, don't forget to like, subscribe, and keep reading comics.